My sister announced at family party that my deceased husband was the father of her baby and she deserved to inherit our home, so I threw her out, but the baby looks exactly like my late husband with the same birthmark, and now everyone says I'm heartless for not helping her. I'm writing this because I don't know what else to do with everything that's happened. My husband Eddie died in a car accident 14 months ago. He was 34, I'm 32. We'd been together for almost 10 years. We bought our house 3 years before he died. It was a small 2-bedroom place with a backyard where Eddie wanted to build a treehouse for the kids we were planning to have. After the accident, the house became this frozen place. His work boots stayed by the door. His coffee mug sat in the dish rack. I couldn't touch anything. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget he was gone, then I'd see his side of the bed and remember all over again. My sister Joelle is 2 years younger than me. She's 30 now. She married her husband Curtis 6 years ago. Curtis works in construction and he's always been the quiet, reliable type. Joelle is different. She's always been the one who needed to be the center of everything. At family dinners, she'd tell the longest stories. At weddings, she'd somehow make herself part of every photo. Our parents learned to just let her have the spotlight because fighting about it caused more problems. After Eddie died, Joelle started posting things on social media that made me uncomfortable. She'd share photos of Eddie from family gatherings and write captions like he was her best friend. One post said she'd lost her brother and her world would never be the same. But Joelle and Eddie were never close. They were polite at holidays. They made small talk about weather and sports. I saw these posts because my mom would call me asking if I was okay with what Joelle was putting online. I wasn't on social media anymore. I deleted the apps from my phone the week after the funeral. Mom said I should talk to Joelle about it, but I didn't have the energy. I was barely managing to go to work and come home. Talking to Joelle about her grief performance seemed impossible. 3 months after Eddie died, Joelle started coming over more. She'd bring food and say she wanted to keep me company. The first few times, she'd stay for an hour and leave. Then she started staying longer. She'd bring her laptop and work from my kitchen table. She'd reorganize my pantry without asking. One day I came home from work and she'd moved all of Eddie's shoes from the entryway to the hall closet. She said it would help me heal to not see them every day. I told her I wasn't ready for that. She said she was just trying to help. She put the shoes back, but I could tell she was annoyed. Around month 5, Joelle started talking about problems with Curtis. She said they were fighting more. She said Curtis was working late all the time and she felt alone. She asked if she could stay in my guest room for a few days while they worked things out. I said yes because she's my sister and I thought she needed support. Those few days turned into 2 weeks. Then a month. Joelle brought more clothes each time she visited her and Curtis's apartment. She started receiving packages at my address. She rearranged the guest room and hung up pictures. When I asked about Curtis and when she was going back, she'd get vague. She'd say they were still working on things. She'd say the space was good for both of them. Joelle started acting different around month 6. She was happier. She'd hum while making breakfast. She'd smile at her phone constantly. I asked if things were better with Curtis. She said they were talking more, but she didn't want to rush back. She said she was helping me by being there, so why would she leave? That's when she started changing things in the main house. She moved Eddie's coffee maker to a high shelf and put her tea kettle on the counter. She replaced our kitchen towels with one she bought. She put her throw pillows on the living room couch. Small things, but they added up. I'd come home and something else would be different. I asked her to stop moving Eddie's things. She said I was being unreasonable. She said I couldn't keep the house like a museum forever. We had our first real fight about it. She cried and said she was just trying to help me move forward. I told her I'd move forward when I was ready. She apologized, but nothing changed. At 7 months after Eddie's death, my parents invited everyone to my cousin's house for a birthday party. I almost didn't go. Being around family while they asked how I was doing felt exhausting. But Mom said it would be good for me to get out of the house. Joelle rode with me to the party. She seemed excited in a way that made me nervous. She kept checking her phone and fixing her hair in the car mirror. At the party, she was unusually animated. She talked to everyone. She made sure she was in the center of every conversation. About an hour into the party, Joelle stood up in the living room and asked everyone to listen. She said she had an announcement. My stomach dropped because I knew something bad was coming. She said she and Curtis were getting divorced. Everyone got quiet. My mom reached for Joelle's hand, but she pulled away. Then Joelle said she was pregnant. She was 6 months along. People started to congratulate her, but she held up her hand. Then she looked right at me and said Eddie was the father. The room went completely silent. Someone's drink glass hit the floor. Joelle kept talking. She said she and Eddie had been seeing each other for over a year. She said it started at a family barbecue where they really talked for the first time. She said they fell in love but couldn't tell anyone because of me and Curtis. She said Eddie had been planning to leave me, but then the accident happened. She said she was devastated when he died because she'd lost the love of her life and no one knew. She said the baby was Eddie's legacy and she was going to honor him by raising their child in the home Eddie had built. She meant my house. Our house. She said she knew it would be hard for me to understand, but she hoped I'd be happy that a part of Eddie would live on. She said she was already living in the house and she planned to stay there to raise the baby. She said it's what Eddie would have wanted. I stood up and walked out. I got in my car and drove home. My phone started ringing immediately. My mom. My dad. My aunt. I turned it off. When I got home, I went into the guest room where Joelle had been staying. All her stuff was there. Maternity clothes I'd never noticed. Baby books on the nightstand. A folder on the dresser with printouts about nursery designs. I called Curtis. He answered on the first ring. I asked if he knew about Joelle's announcement. He said he'd heard about it an hour ago from my uncle. He said he had no idea she was pregnant. He said he'd been trying to fix their marriage for months, but Joelle kept saying she needed space. He said he'd suspected she was seeing someone but didn't know who. I asked if he thought it could be true about Eddie. Curtis was quiet for a long time. Then he said Joelle had cheated before. Early in their marriage, she'd had a 3-month affair with a guy from her gym. Curtis had found out and they'd gone to counseling. Joelle promised it would never happen again. Curtis said he'd wanted to believe her. He said now he felt like he'd wasted years on someone who was never going to change. Curtis said he was filing for divorce. He said he wasn't going to raise another man's child. He said he was done being Joelle's backup plan. My parents came to the house that night. Joelle wasn't with them. Mom was crying. Dad looked tired. They said they didn't know what to believe. They said Joelle seemed convinced everything she was saying was true. Mom asked if I thought Eddie could have done this. I told them Eddie wouldn't have. But I also knew I couldn't prove that. Dad said Joelle was talking about her rights to the house. She'd told them that as the mother of Eddie's child, she should inherit his estate. I told them the house was only in my name. Eddie and I had refinanced a year before he died and we'd put it solely under my name for tax reasons. Joelle had no legal claim to anything. Mom asked where Joelle was supposed to go once the baby came. I said that wasn't my problem. Dad said I was being cold. I told them what Joelle did was unforgivable and I wanted her out of my house. Mom said we needed to think about the baby. I said I was thinking about myself. They left after midnight. I went into the guest room and packed all of Joelle's things into garbage bags. I put them on the front porch. Then I called a locksmith and had them come out the next morning to change all the locks. Joelle showed up 2 days later. She tried her key and when it didn't work, she started pounding on the door. I didn't answer. She sat on the porch for 3 hours. Finally, she left. She posted on social media that night about being abandoned by her family during the hardest time of her life. She said she was a pregnant woman with nowhere to go. She said I was trying to erase Eddie's child because I was bitter about not having children with him myself. People who didn't know the full story started messaging me. Some of them said I should be ashamed. Some said families should support each other no matter what. I deleted my social media accounts entirely. Joelle moved in with our parents. She kept posting updates about her pregnancy. She'd write things about how Eddie visited her in dreams and told her everything would be okay. She posted ultrasound photos with captions about Eddie's legacy. She tagged me in posts even though I wasn't on the platforms anymore. My friends would tell me about them. Curtis filed for divorce a week after the announcement. He sent me a message saying he was sorry for everything. He said he should have seen who Joelle really was a long time ago. The next 3 months were strange. My parents would call and try to get me to talk to Joelle. They said she was struggling financially. They said she was scared about being a single mom. They said the baby was innocent in all of this and deserved to have family. I said the baby could have family, but Joelle made choices that meant I couldn't be part of that. Some of my extended family took Joelle's side. They said I was being cruel to a pregnant woman. They said even if Eddie had done something wrong, the baby didn't deserve to be punished. Others understood why I couldn't be around Joelle. My family split down the middle. Joelle had the baby 3 months ago. My mom called from the hospital. She said it was a boy. She said he looked just like Eddie. She said I should come see him. I said no. Mom said she didn't raise me to be heartless. I hung up. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. 2 days later, I drove to the hospital. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I went up to the maternity ward and asked what room Joelle was in. The nurse checked and gave me the number. I stood outside the room for 10 minutes before I went in. Joelle was alone, holding the baby. When she saw me, she smiled like nothing had happened between us. She asked if I wanted to hold him. I didn't answer. I just looked at the baby. He had Eddie's nose. Eddie's chin. The same dark hair Eddie had. Joelle said his name was Ethan Eddie. She said she chose Eddie for the middle name so he'd always carry his father with him. She held the baby out to me. I took him because I didn't know what else to do. He was warm and heavier than I expected. He made small noises. I looked at his face and saw Eddie in every feature. I handed him back to Joelle after less than a minute. I told her I needed to leave. She asked me to stay. She said we could work through this as a family. I walked out without answering. Update 1: I'm updating because people asked me to and because things have gotten more complicated. After I saw the baby at the hospital, I thought I could just go back to my life and ignore everything. That didn't work. My mom called every few days asking me to reconsider meeting Ethan properly. She said Joelle was struggling and needed help. She said I should at least try to be an aunt to the baby. I said no every time. But then my dad got sick. He had pneumonia and was in the hospital for a week. Mom was with him constantly. My Aunt Linda was helping out, but she had to work. They needed someone to watch Ethan for a few hours a day so Joelle could visit Dad at the hospital. My mom called and asked me directly. She said she knew I didn't want to see Joelle, but Dad was asking about me and she couldn't be in two places at once. She said it would just be for a few days until Dad was stable. I said I'd think about it. I ended up saying yes. Not because I forgave Joelle, but because my dad was sick and my mom sounded exhausted. I told Mom I'd watch Ethan at her house, not at mine, and Joelle couldn't be there when I was. The first day was awkward. Joelle dropped Ethan off with a huge bag of supplies and a list of instructions. She tried to hug me. I stepped back. She said she was glad I was doing this. She said maybe it was the start of healing our relationship. I told her to just leave. Ethan was 3 months old then. He slept most of the time I watched him. When he was awake, he'd stare at me with these dark eyes that looked exactly like Eddie's. I'd feed him bottles and change his diapers and try not to think about how wrong everything was. This went on for 5 days while Dad was in the hospital. On the third day, I was changing Ethan on my parents' couch when I found a birthmark on his left shoulder blade. It was small and shaped like a comma. Eddie had the exact same birthmark in the exact same spot. I'd kissed it 1,000 times. I sat there holding this baby and I couldn't breathe right. When Joelle came to pick up Ethan that evening, I asked her about the birthmark. She got this look on her face like she'd won something. She said it was proof. She said there was no way to fake a birthmark. I didn't say anything else. Dad came home from the hospital a few days later. Mom said I didn't need to watch Ethan anymore. But then she asked if I'd be willing to help out occasionally because Joelle was overwhelmed. Mom said Joelle wasn't coping well with being a single mother. She said the baby cried a lot and Joelle wasn't sleeping. I said I'd think about it. What I didn't tell Mom was that I'd been doing research. I'd been reading about DNA tests and paternity and what rights I might have as Eddie's widow if the baby really was his. I called a lawyer my friend recommended. I explained the situation. The lawyer said without a DNA test, there was no way to know for sure. She said if I wanted to establish paternity legally, I'd need to petition the court, but that would be complicated since Eddie was deceased. She said if the baby was Eddie's, I could potentially have rights regarding inheritance and decision-making, but Joelle would still be the mother with primary custody. She said it would be messy and expensive and might not accomplish much except proving what I already suspected. I decided not to pursue legal action. What was the point? If the baby was Eddie's, it didn't change anything about what Joelle did. If the baby wasn't Eddie's, then the whole thing was even more disturbing because it meant Joelle was delusional. But I started helping with Ethan occasionally. Not every day, maybe once or twice a week. I'd go to my parents' house when Joelle needed to run errands or needed a break. I never went to wherever Joelle was living. I still hadn't asked where that was. Joelle kept trying to use these moments to talk to me. She'd show up early to pick up Ethan or she'd linger when dropping him off. She'd try to start conversations about Eddie. She'd say things like remember when Eddie used to. Or Eddie always loved. I'd cut her off every time. I told her we weren't doing this. She'd look hurt but she'd stop. After about a month of this new routine, Joelle asked if I'd come to Ethan's 4-month checkup with her. She said she wanted me to be involved in his life and this was a way to do that. I said no. She asked again a week later. She said she was scared to go alone because the doctor was going to give him shots. I said she could ask Mom or one of her friends. She said Mom was busy and she didn't really have friends nearby anymore. I found out later from my Aunt Linda that most of Joelle's friends had stopped talking to her after the whole situation came out. Apparently, Joelle had told several different versions of the story to different people and they'd compared notes. Some of them thought she was lying. Others just didn't want to be involved in family drama. I still said no to the doctor appointment. But then Joelle sent me a text with a photo of Ethan smiling. The text said he smiled like Eddie used to. I looked at that photo for a long time. I deleted it but I kept thinking about it. 2 weeks ago, Joelle showed up at my house. I hadn't given her my new key and I didn't know how she knew I'd be home. She had Ethan in a car seat. She rang the doorbell and when I answered, she asked if we could talk inside. I said no. She said she'd stand on the porch then, she didn't care if the neighbors watched. She said she needed to be honest with me. She said she'd been thinking about everything that happened and she understood why I was upset. She said the way she announced the pregnancy was wrong. She said she should have told me privately first. But then she said everything else was still true. She said she and Eddie had loved each other and Ethan was proof of that. I asked her to stop. She kept going. She said Eddie had told her he was going to ask me for a divorce. She said he was just waiting for the right time. She said the accident happened before he could do it and now she was the only one who knew the truth. I told her to get off my porch. She said she just wanted me to know that Eddie had been happy with her in a way he wasn't with me. She said he'd told her things he never told me. She said she knew it was hard for me to hear, but I deserved to know the truth. I went back inside and locked the door. She stayed on the porch for another 20 minutes. I could hear her talking, but I couldn't make out the words. Eventually, she left. I called Curtis that night. I asked him if Joel had ever mentioned Eddie before the announcement. Curtis said not really. He said Joel would sometimes complain that I talked about Eddie too much at family events, but that was it. He said after Eddie died, Joel had gotten more active on social media, but he didn't think much of it at the time. I asked Curtis if he believed Joel's story about the affair. Curtis said he didn't know. He said the baby looked like Eddie and that was hard to explain. But he also said Joel had lied about so many things during their marriage that he couldn't trust anything she said. Curtis told me he'd moved on. He was seeing someone new. He said he hoped I could move on too. I said I was trying. We haven't talked since then. My mom called yesterday asking if I'd come to Sunday dinner. She said the whole family would be there, including Joel and Ethan. She said it had been almost a year since Eddie died and maybe it was time to try to be a family again. I asked if Dad wanted me there or if this was just Mom's idea. She said Dad missed me. She said he didn't like how divided the family had become. I told her I'd think about it. I probably won't go. Update 2: I went to the Sunday dinner my mom mentioned in my last update. I didn't plan to, but the night before, I had this moment where I was sitting in my house and everything felt wrong. The walls felt too close. The silence was too loud. I thought about spending another Sunday alone and I just couldn't do it. So I showed up at my parents' house at noon like Mom had asked. Joel was already there with Ethan. He was 6 months old by then. Joel saw me and her face did this thing where she tried not to look too happy. She said hi like we were old friends who'd just been busy. I nodded and went to help Mom in the kitchen. Dinner was tense. Everyone talked about safe topics like the weather and sports and what was happening in the neighborhood. Ethan sat in a high chair next to Joel. He kept making noises and dropping his toys and Joel would pick them up and smile at him. A few times he looked over at me and I'd look away. After dinner, Mom asked me to help clean up. In the kitchen, she said she was proud of me for coming. She said she knew it was hard. I told her it was just dinner, she didn't need to make it into something bigger. She said every step forward mattered. When I came back to the living room, Joel was gone. Mom said she'd gone to change Ethan. Dad was watching TV. My uncle was talking to my aunt about their vacation plans. I sat down on the couch and waited for them to leave so I could leave. But then Ethan started crying from the other room. Joel called out asking if someone could help her. Mom was still in the kitchen. Dad was half asleep. No one moved. The crying got louder. I got up and went to the guest room where Joel was. She had Ethan on the bed and was trying to change him, but he was kicking and screaming. She looked stressed. She asked if I could hold his legs still while she fastened the new diaper. I did. Ethan stopped crying once the diaper was on. Joel picked him up and bounced him a little. Then she tried to hand him to me. I took him because everyone was watching. He was bigger than the last time I'd held him. Heavier. He looked at my face and did this smile where his whole face lit up. It was Eddie's smile exactly. Joel said he liked me. I gave him back to her after a few seconds. That started a new pattern. Mom would invite me to Sunday dinners. Sometimes I'd go, sometimes I wouldn't. When I went, I'd end up holding Ethan at some point because Joel would need help or Mom would ask me to give Joel a break. I never stayed long. I never went to Joel's place. But I stopped avoiding Ethan completely. Joel started texting me more. She'd send photos of Ethan doing normal baby things. Learning to sit up. Eating solid food for the first time. I wouldn't respond but she kept sending them. Then one day she sent a text asking if I wanted some of Eddie's baby photos. She said Mom had given her copies and she thought I might want to see how similar Ethan looked to Eddie as a baby. I said no. She sent them anyway. I looked at them. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Around this time, Curtis reached out. He said his divorce from Joel was finalized. He said Joel had tried to get alimony but the judge denied it because of the affair and her leaving the marriage. He said Joel was living with our parents still. He said she tried to contact him about helping with Ethan but he'd blocked her number. Curtis asked how I was doing. I said I was managing. He said he'd heard from my mom that I was starting to spend time with the baby. He asked if that meant I believed Joel's story. I said I didn't know what I believed. I said the baby looked like Eddie and that fact existed whether I wanted it to or not. Last month, Joel asked if she could come over to my house. She said she wanted to talk about something important. I said no. She said it was about Ethan and Eddie and she needed to explain some things in person. I said whatever she needed to say, she could say over text. She said it was too complicated for text. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop instead. Neutral ground. She brought Ethan with her. He was almost 9 months old. He could sit up on his own and he'd started making sounds that were almost words. Joel put him in a high chair at our table and gave him some toys to play with. She said she wanted to apologize. She said she'd been thinking about how she'd handled everything and she realized she'd made a lot of mistakes. She said she should have told me about Eddie privately. She said she shouldn't have tried to move into my house. She said she understood why I couldn't forgive her. But then she said she didn't regret Ethan. She said he was the best thing in her life and she'd do everything the same way if it meant having him. She said she hoped one day I could see that too. I asked her why she really wanted to meet. She said she was struggling financially. She said our parents were helping but they couldn't support her forever. She said she'd applied for government assistance but it wasn't enough. She said she'd been looking for jobs but childcare was expensive and she couldn't afford it. Then she asked if I'd consider helping her. She said it didn't have to be money. She said if I could watch Ethan a few days a week, she could get a job and start getting back on her feet. She said it would be good for me too, to spend more time with him. I told her I'd think about it. She looked relieved. She said she knew I had a good heart and she trusted me to do the right thing. I haven't given her an answer yet. Part of me thinks helping with Ethan is the right thing to do because he didn't ask for any of this. Part of me thinks helping Joelle in any way is letting her win. Part of me thinks none of this matters because the damage is already done and I'm just going through motions until enough time passes that I can feel normal again. My mom says I'm being too hard on Joelle. She says Joelle made mistakes but she's still my sister and she's trying her best. My dad doesn't say much but when he does talk about it, he says family should stick together. None of them talk about what Joelle did to Eddie's memory or to me. They just want everything to go back to normal. But normal doesn't exist anymore. I don't know what this is now. Update 3: I didn't agree to watch Ethan regularly. I told Joelle I'd help occasionally when our parents couldn't, but I wasn't going to be her childcare solution. She said she understood but I could tell she was frustrated. She ended up getting a part-time job at a retail store and mom watches Ethan during her shifts. Something happened last month that changed things. Joelle posted on social media again. I don't have accounts anymore but my friend Sarah sent me screenshots. Joelle had written a long post about Eddie and how he was the love of her life and how hard it was to raise his son alone. She posted photos of Ethan side by side with old photos of Eddie. She wrote about their relationship like it was this grand romance. But she also posted something new. She wrote that I'd been trying to turn the family against her. She said I was making her life harder because I couldn't accept that Eddie had loved someone else. She said I was taking out my bitterness on an innocent child. She tagged several family members in the post. My phone started getting messages from relatives I hadn't talked to in months. Some were supportive of me. Some asked why I was making things difficult for Joelle. I didn't respond to any of them. But then my cousin Jericho called. He said he needed to tell me something about Joelle. Jericho lives in the next town over and he'd been at the same gym as Joelle 2 years ago. He said he'd been thinking about Joelle's story and something didn't add up. He said he remembered seeing Joelle at the gym with a guy who wasn't Curtis. This was about 2 years ago, before Eddie died. He said they seemed close but he didn't think much of it at the time. Jericho said he went back through his old social media posts and found a photo from a gym event where Joelle and this guy were in the background. He sent me the photo. Joelle had her arm around a man I didn't recognize. They were both smiling. The photo was dated 18 months before Eddie died. I asked Jericho if he knew who the guy was. He said no, but he did some asking around and found out the guy's name was David. He'd been a regular at that gym but hadn't been there in over a year. Jericho said he'd tried to find David on social media but couldn't. I sat with this information for a few days. Then I called Curtis. I asked if the name David meant anything to him. Curtis went quiet. Then he said that was the guy Joelle had cheated with years ago. He said David had worked at the gym where Joelle had a membership. Curtis said after he found out about the affair, Joelle had promised to stop going to that gym. Curtis said he'd believed her. I asked Curtis if he thought David could be Ethan's father. Curtis said he'd wondered the same thing. He said the timeline could work. He said Joelle had gotten pregnant right around the time Curtis started noticing she was distant again. I told Curtis about Jericho seeing Joelle with David at the gym. Curtis said that meant she'd lied about cutting contact with him. Curtis said he felt stupid for trusting her. He said if David was the father, then the whole story about Eddie was just Joelle's way of avoiding responsibility and getting sympathy. I decided to confront Joelle. I went to my parents' house when I knew she'd be there. Ethan was napping. I showed Joelle the photo Jericho had sent me. I asked her who David was. Joelle's face went white. She said it was an old photo and didn't mean anything. I asked her if David was Ethan's father. She said no. She said Eddie was the father and I was trying to find any reason not to believe her. I asked why she was still seeing David after she promised Curtis she wouldn't. She said I didn't understand the situation. She said she and David had just been friends. I told her I didn't believe her anymore. I said I thought she'd been seeing David and got pregnant and made up the story about Eddie to cover it up. Joelle started crying. She said I was being cruel. She said she'd told me the truth and I was calling her a liar. She said Ethan looked exactly like Eddie and that was proof enough. I said looks weren't proof. I said plenty of people look similar. I said if she wanted me to believe her, she needed to prove it with a DNA test. Joelle said we couldn't do a DNA test because Eddie was dead. I said there were labs that could test Ethan's DNA against Eddie's DNA from his things, like a hairbrush or toothbrush. Joelle said that was invasive and wrong. She said she shouldn't have to prove anything. My mom came into the room then. She'd heard us arguing. She asked what was going on. I showed her the photo of Joelle and David. I explained what Jericho had told me and what Curtis had said. Mom looked at Joelle. She asked if it was true. Joelle said no. She said David was nobody. She said I was making things up because I couldn't handle the truth about Eddie. Mom said if there was any doubt, maybe a DNA test was a good idea. Joelle got angry. She said she couldn't believe her own mother didn't trust her. She said everyone was turning against her. She picked up Ethan and left. That was 3 weeks ago. Joelle hasn't talked to me since. She's still living with my parents, but according to Mom, she barely comes out of her room except to take care of Ethan. Mom says Joelle is depressed and feels attacked. Dad thinks I went too far by accusing her of lying. But yesterday Mom called me with news. She said she'd talked to Joelle about the DNA test. She said Joelle finally agreed to do it if it would end all the questions. Mom said she'd made an appointment at a lab that could do familial DNA testing using samples from Eddie's parents. My in-laws agreed to participate. The test is scheduled for next week. Mom says the results will take 2 to 3 weeks after that. She asked me what I'll do if the test proves Eddie is the father. I said I don't know. She asked what I'll do if it proves he isn't. I said I still don't know. Part of me wants the test to prove Joelle lied about everything so I can have Eddie back in some way. Part of me wants the test to prove she told the truth so all this doubt can end. Most of me doesn't want to know because either answer means my life stays broken. I still have Eddie's toothbrush in the bathroom cabinet. I still have his clothes in the closet. The house still feels like a place where someone used to live instead of a place where I live now. Whether Joelle lied or told the truth doesn't change the fact that Eddie is gone and I'm here alone trying to figure out what comes next. I'll update once we get the results. Or maybe I won't. Maybe knowing the truth doesn't actually change anything. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My husband told me he wishes his deceased ex-wife was alive instead of me during our biggest fight while I'm 6 months pregnant with his child and raising his 2 kids from previous marriage. His sister-in-law has been poisoning our marriage for 2 years behind my back through secret emails. 3 nights ago, my husband Marcus, 41M, screamed at me that he wished his ex-wife Cynthia was still alive and that I should have died instead of her. I am Sarah, 34F, and we have been married for 4 years. Marcus has 2 kids from his previous marriage, Emma, 14F, and Tyler, 12M. Cynthia died in a car crash 9 years ago when the kids were very young. Marcus and I also have our own son together, David, 3M, and I am currently 6 months pregnant with our second child together, a boy. The fight started because I confronted Marcus about missing David's preschool graduation ceremony last week. He had promised to be there, but instead he went to some work event that he claimed was mandatory. David kept asking where Daddy was during the ceremony, and I had to make excuses. This was just the latest in a long series of missed events and broken promises over the past few months. Marcus came home around midnight that night, and I was waiting for him in the kitchen. I told him we needed to talk about his priorities and how his absence was affecting all the kids, not just David. That conversation turned into the worst fight of our marriage. Let me give you some background about how we got to this point. Marcus and Cynthia were college sweethearts who got married when they were both 24. They had Emma 2 years later, then Tyler 2 years after that. Cynthia was working as a pediatric nurse while Marcus was building his career in construction management. By all accounts, they were happy together and had what everyone considered a perfect family. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday evening in March. Cynthia was driving home from her shift at the hospital when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit her car. She died at the scene. Emma was 5 and Tyler was 3 at the time. Marcus was completely destroyed by the loss, as you can imagine. I met Marcus 6 years after Cynthia died. I was working as an administrative assistant at the construction company where Marcus had become a project manager. We started talking during lunch breaks, and I could tell he was still carrying a lot of pain. Marcus was very upfront about his situation from the beginning. He told me about Cynthia and the kids during our second coffee date. He also made it clear that dating was complicated for him because his priority would always be Emma and Tyler. Our relationship developed slowly over the course of 2 years. Marcus was cautious about introducing me to the kids, which I understood completely. When I finally met Emma and Tyler, they were polite but reserved. Emma was 11 at the time and clearly protective of her little brother. Tyler was 9 and more open to having me around, but still asked questions about whether I was trying to replace his mom. I never tried to replace Cynthia. I made sure the kids knew that from day one. Their mom was irreplaceable, and I was just someone who cared about their dad and wanted to be part of their lives if they were comfortable with that. Emma warmed up to me gradually over several months. Tyler accepted me faster, probably because he was younger and had fewer clear memories of his mom. Marcus proposed to me after we had been dating for 3 years. The proposal was simple and private, just the 2 of us at the park where we had our first real date. We got married in a small ceremony with just our immediate families present. Emma and Tyler were both part of the wedding party, and they seemed genuinely happy that their dad was starting a new chapter. The first 2 years of our marriage were good. We fell into a routine as a blended family. I helped with homework, drove the kids to activities, and attended school events alongside Marcus. Emma and Tyler started calling me Sarah Mom, which was their own idea. Marcus seemed to find peace in having a partner again, and we decided to try for a baby together. David was born 3 years ago, and the whole family was excited to welcome him. Emma and Tyler loved being big siblings and helped out constantly with diaper changes and feeding time. Marcus was an involved and loving father to David from the beginning. He took paternity leave and spent hours just holding our son and talking to him. But over the past 8 months, something shifted in Marcus. It started small, coming home later from work, being less engaged during family dinners, spending more time on his phone. I initially thought it was just work stress because his company had taken on several big projects. The changes became more noticeable around the time I got pregnant again. Marcus seemed distant when I told him about the pregnancy. He smiled and said he was happy, but his reaction was nothing like when I was pregnant with David. With David, Marcus was excited and involved from the moment we found out. He came to every doctor's appointment, helped me pick out baby clothes, and talked to my belly every night. This time, Marcus has missed 3 of my prenatal appointments. He says he is too busy at work, but then I see him posting photos from happy hour with his coworkers on the same days. When I try to talk to him about baby names or nursery decorations, he gives short responses and changes the subject. The kids have noticed the change too. Emma asked me last month if Marcus and I were getting divorced because he seems so unhappy at home. Tyler has been acting out more at school, and his teacher called to say he seems distracted and worried about something. David keeps asking why Daddy does not want to play with him anymore. 2 weeks ago, Marcus missed Tyler's soccer championship game. Tyler's team won, and he kept looking in the stands for his dad during the celebration. Marcus had promised to be there but got stuck at work again. Tyler cried in the car on the way home and asked if Daddy was mad at him for something. Last week was David's preschool graduation. It was a small ceremony, but David had been practicing his songs for weeks and was so excited for both his parents to watch him perform. The morning of the graduation, Marcus got a call about some work emergency and said he had to go handle it. I begged him to find someone else to deal with it because this was important to David, but Marcus said his boss specifically requested him. I went to the graduation alone and watched David scan the audience looking for Marcus during his performance. After the ceremony, David asked me where Daddy was, and I had to explain that Daddy had to work. David asked if Daddy did not want to see him sing, and I did not know what to say. That night when Marcus came home, I was waiting for him. I had spent hours thinking about how to approach this conversation because I did not want another fight. But I also could not let this pattern continue. I started by telling Marcus that I understood work was stressful, but missing David's graduation really hurt our son. Marcus immediately got defensive and said I did not understand the pressure he was under at work. He said he was doing his best to balance everything and that I was being unfair. I pointed out that this was not just about one event. Marcus had been pulling away from all of us for months. He was missing family dinners, skipping bedtime stories with David, and barely talking to Emma and Tyler about their lives. The kids were starting to notice and ask questions. Marcus said I was being dramatic and that he was just going through a busy period at work. He said things would get better once his current projects were finished. But I had heard the same excuse for months, and nothing was changing. I asked Marcus if something else was going on. Was he having problems at work that he had not told me about? Was he struggling with something personally? I said I wanted to help but I needed him to be honest with me. That question seemed to trigger something in Marcus. His face changed, and he started yelling about how I did not understand what it was like to be responsible for so many people. He said I had no idea what kind of pressure he was under to provide for our family and keep everyone happy. I told Marcus that I was not asking him to be perfect, but I was asking him to be present. The kids needed their father, and I needed my husband. We were supposed to be a team, but lately it felt like I was managing everything alone. Marcus said I was being selfish and only thinking about myself. He said I knew what I was getting into when I married a widower with kids, and that I should be more understanding of his situation. That comment really upset me because I had always been understanding of Marcus's situation. I had never pressured him to love me the way he loved Cynthia. I had never asked him to forget his first wife or pretend she never existed. I had gone out of my way to honor Cynthia's memory and make sure the kids never felt like I was trying to replace their mother. I told Marcus that I had been nothing but supportive for 6 years, and that it was unfair for him to act like I was being unreasonable now. All I was asking was for him to show up for his family and be the father and husband I knew he could be. Marcus exploded at that point. He started screaming about how I had no right to judge him or tell him how to be a father. He said I was not Emma and Tyler's real mother and that I should stop pretending I understood what it was like to lose the love of your life. Then Marcus said the words that I cannot stop thinking about. He screamed that he wished Cynthia was still alive and that I should have died instead of her. He said Cynthia was twice the woman I would ever be and that she would never have nagged him the way I was nagging him. I stood there staring at Marcus, not believing what I had just heard. He immediately realized what he had said and tried to take it back, but the words were already out there. He said he did not mean it and that he was just upset, but the damage was done. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and locked the door. Marcus followed me and kept knocking, asking me to let him in so we could talk. I told him through the door that there was nothing to talk about and that he should sleep in the guest room. The next morning, Marcus tried to act like nothing had happened. He made coffee and asked if I wanted breakfast. When I did not respond, he said we should talk about what happened the night before. I told him there was nothing to discuss and that I needed space to think. Marcus has been trying to apologize for the past 3 days, but I cannot even look at him. He keeps saying he did not mean what he said and that he was just angry and said something stupid. But those words came from somewhere deep inside him, and I think they represent how he really feels about our marriage. The worst part is that the kids can sense something is wrong. Emma asked me yesterday if Marcus and I had a fight because we were barely speaking to each other. Tyler has been extra clingy and keeps asking if everything is okay. David does not understand what is happening, but he can feel the tension in the house. I do not know what to do from here. Part of me wants to pack up the kids and leave, but Emma and Tyler have already lost one mother figure in their lives. I do not want to be another woman who disappears from their world. And David loves his father, even if Marcus has been distant lately. But I also cannot pretend that Marcus did not say what he said. Those words revealed something about how he really sees our marriage and our family. Maybe I have always been a placeholder for Cynthia, and Marcus was just going through the motions of building a life with me. I have been staying busy with the kids and avoiding being alone with Marcus. When he tries to start a conversation, I find an excuse to leave the room. I know we need to talk eventually, but I do not know what there is to say. How do you come back from telling your pregnant wife that you wish she was dead? Marcus has been making an effort with the kids since our fight, probably because he realizes how much damage he has done. He came home early yesterday and helped Tyler with his science project. He read bedtime stories to David for the first time in weeks. But I can see that the kids are confused by the sudden change in his behavior. I keep wondering if Marcus has always felt this way and just finally said it out loud, or if this is something new that has developed over the past few months. Either way, I do not know how to move forward from here. The trust between us feels completely broken, and I do not see how we can rebuild it. Update 1. I did not expect to post an update this soon, but a lot has happened since my original post. Thank you to everyone who commented and sent messages. Reading your responses helped me realize that I was not overreacting to what Marcus said. The day after I posted, I decided to write Marcus a letter instead of trying to have another conversation that might turn into a screaming match. I spent most of the day writing and rewriting it, trying to find the right words to explain how I felt without attacking him. In the letter, I told Marcus that his words had broken something fundamental in our marriage. I explained that I had always known I was not his first choice, but that I had hoped we could build something real together anyway. I said that telling your pregnant wife you wish she was dead crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. I also told Marcus that I thought he needed professional help to deal with whatever was causing him to pull away from our family. I said that if he was serious about saving our marriage, he needed to start seeing someone immediately. I gave him 2 choices: we could work together to fix our problems, or we could start discussing how to separate in a way that would be least damaging to the kids. I left the letter on Marcus's pillow and took the kids to my sister's house for the weekend. I told Emma and Tyler that Marcus and I needed some time to work through some problems, and that they would be staying with their Aunt Lisa for a couple of days. Emma immediately asked if we were getting divorced, and I told her honestly that I did not know yet. When we got back on Sunday evening, Marcus was not at the house. There was a note on the kitchen counter saying that he had gone to stay with his brother for a few days to think about everything. He said he would call the kids every night and that he would be back by Wednesday. Marcus did call every night to talk to Emma, Tyler, and David. The conversations were awkward and the kids kept asking when he was coming home. I told them that Daddy was working through some personal problems and needed a little space, but that he loved them very much. On Wednesday night, Marcus came back. The kids were already in bed, so it was just the 2 of us in the kitchen. Marcus looked like he had not slept much over the past few days. He sat down across from me and said he had been doing a lot of thinking. Marcus told me that he had realized he had been depressed for months without recognizing it. He said that around the time I got pregnant again, he started having panic attacks about something bad happening to our family. He was scared that he was going to lose everything again like he did with Cynthia. Marcus explained that he had been pulling away from all of us because he thought it would hurt less if something terrible happened. He knew that made no sense, but he could not stop himself from creating distance. He said the more I tried to pull him back into the family, the more trapped and panicked he felt. Marcus apologized for what he said during our fight. He said those words came from a place of fear and self-hatred, not from any real feelings about Cynthia or me. He said he had been angry at himself for being happy with our life together because it felt like he was betraying Cynthia's memory. I listened to everything Marcus said, but I told him that understanding why he said those things did not make them hurt any less. I said that depression might explain his behavior, but it did not excuse telling me he wished I was dead. That was a choice he made in the moment, and it was one that I could not forget. Marcus said he understood why I could not trust him anymore. He told me that he had already made an appointment with a counselor for the following week. He also said that if I wanted to separate, he would not fight me on it. He said his priority now was making sure the kids were okay, regardless of what happened between us. I told Marcus that I needed more time to decide what I wanted to do. I said I was willing to try working on our marriage, but only if he was completely committed to getting help and changing his behavior. I also said that if he ever spoke to me that way again, I would leave immediately. We agreed that Marcus would move back into our bedroom, but that we would sleep separately until I felt ready to share a bed again. We also agreed to tell the kids that we were working through some problems but that both of us loved them and would always be their parents no matter what. The next few weeks were strange and tense. Marcus started seeing his counselor twice a week and seemed to be taking it seriously. He also made a big effort to be more present with the kids. He started coming home earlier from work and spent time with each of them individually every day. But I was still struggling to connect with Marcus on any emotional level. Every time he tried to have a conversation about our relationship or our future, I found myself shutting down. I could not stop thinking about what he had said, and I could not shake the feeling that he had revealed his true feelings about our marriage. 2 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. I was looking for David's birth certificate in Marcus's filing cabinet when I found a folder I had never seen before. Inside were dozens of printed emails between Marcus and Cynthia's sister, Carla. I know I should not have read them, but I could not help myself. The emails went back almost 2 years, starting right around the time Marcus and I got married. In the early emails, Carla was just checking in and asking how Marcus and the kids were doing. But over time, the conversations became much more personal. Carla had been writing to Marcus about how much she missed Cynthia and how hard it was to see him with someone new. She said that watching Marcus build a life with me felt like Cynthia was being erased from the family. Marcus was responding to these emails and agreeing with a lot of what Carla was saying. In one email from last year, Carla told Marcus that Cynthia would not have wanted him to move on so quickly. She said that Cynthia would have expected Marcus to focus on raising Emma and Tyler instead of starting a new family. Marcus replied that he sometimes felt guilty about being happy with me and that he worried he was being disloyal to Cynthia's memory. The emails got worse from there. Carla started making specific comments about me and our relationship. She said that I was obviously trying to replace Cynthia and that I was probably pressuring Marcus to have more kids so I could feel more important in the family. She said that Emma and Tyler were old enough to remember their real mother and that they probably resented having me around. Marcus did not defend me in any of these emails. Instead, he seemed to agree with most of what Carla was saying. In several emails, he said that he worried about the impact of our relationship on Emma and Tyler. He said that sometimes he wondered if he had made a mistake by remarrying so soon. The most recent email was from 3 months ago, right around the time Marcus started pulling away from our family. Carla had written to Marcus saying that she thought Cynthia would be disappointed in the choices he was making. She said that Marcus was putting his own happiness ahead of his children's well-being and that Cynthia would never have done that. Marcus's response to that email made me sick to my stomach. He wrote that Carla was probably right and that he had been selfish. He said that Cynthia had been a better parent than he was and that she would have handled everything differently. He also said that he sometimes felt like he was living someone else's life and that he did not know how to be the person everyone expected him to be. After reading those emails, I understood why Marcus had been pulling away and why he had said what he said during our fight. Carla had been poisoning his mind against our marriage for 2 years, and Marcus had been letting her do it. Instead of defending our family, he had been agreeing with her criticism and letting her guilt eat away at him. I printed out the most damaging emails and confronted Marcus with them that night. I asked him how long he had been having these conversations with Carla and why he had never told me about them. Marcus immediately became defensive and said that Carla was just grieving and needed someone to talk to. I told Marcus that Carla was not just grieving, she was actively trying to sabotage our marriage. I pointed out specific examples from the emails where she had made false accusations about me and our relationship. I asked Marcus why he had never defended me or told Carla that her comments were inappropriate. Marcus said that he had not realized how toxic the emails had become because they had developed gradually over time. He said that Carla had been Cynthia's best friend and sister, so he felt obligated to maintain a relationship with her. He also said that some of what Carla wrote had triggered his own doubts about our marriage. I told Marcus that his relationship with Carla was over as far as I was concerned. I said that if he wanted to save our marriage, he needed to cut off all contact with her immediately. I also said that he needed to tell his counselor about these emails and work through whatever guilt and confusion they had caused. Marcus agreed to stop communicating with Carla, but he seemed reluctant about it. He said that Carla was family and that cutting her off completely might hurt Emma and Tyler's relationship with their aunt. I told Marcus that Carla had made it clear she did not support our family, so she could not be trusted around our children. We had several more conversations about the emails over the next few days. Marcus admitted that reading Carla's messages had made him question everything about our relationship. He said that he had started wondering if I really loved Emma and Tyler or if I was just pretending to care about them to keep Marcus happy. I was furious that Marcus had been doubting my relationship with his children based on the words of someone who clearly had an agenda. I reminded Marcus of all the ways I had shown my love for Emma and Tyler over the years. I had never missed a school event, never complained about driving them to activities, and never treated them differently than I treated David. Marcus said he knew that logically, but that Carla's emails had planted seeds of doubt that had grown over time. He said that every time I corrected Emma's behavior or asked Tyler to do his homework, he found himself wondering if I was being too harsh or if Cynthia would have handled the situation better. I realized that Marcus had been comparing me to Cynthia for years, but that Carla's emails had made those comparisons much worse. Instead of seeing me as David's mother and a loving stepmother to Emma and Tyler, Marcus had been viewing me as an inadequate replacement for his first wife. Update 2: I have been putting off writing this update because I was not sure how much detail to share, but people have been asking for an update, so here it is. Things between Marcus and me continued to get worse after I discovered the emails from Carla. Marcus did stop communicating with Carla like he promised, but the damage from those 2 years of correspondence was already done. During his counseling sessions, it became clear that Marcus had been struggling with guilt about our marriage from the very beginning. He had convinced himself that being happy with me was somehow disrespectful to Cynthia's memory. Marcus's counselor suggested that we try couples counseling in addition to his individual sessions. I agreed to try it, but I was still very angry about the emails and about everything Marcus had said during our fight. The first few couples sessions were mostly me listing all the ways Marcus had hurt me while he sat there looking miserable. Our counselor tried to help us work through the communication problems in our marriage, but it became obvious that Marcus and I had much deeper issues to resolve. Marcus admitted that he had never fully processed Cynthia's death and that he had jumped into a relationship with me as a way to avoid dealing with his grief. I started to realize that Marcus had never really seen me as my own person. From the beginning of our relationship, I had been filling a role that Cynthia used to fill, but Marcus had never actually fallen in love with who I was as an individual. I was just a generic replacement wife and mother. This realization was devastating. It meant that our entire marriage had been built on a lie. Marcus had not married me because he loved me specifically, he had married me because he needed someone to help him raise his kids and manage his household. Any reasonably attractive and competent woman could have filled that role. During one particularly difficult counseling session, Marcus admitted that he had proposed to me because he thought it was what he was supposed to do, not because he actually wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. He said that everyone kept telling him that Cynthia would have wanted him to move on and be happy, so he had convinced himself that marrying me was the right thing to do. I asked Marcus if he had ever actually loved me or if I had just been a convenient solution to his problems. Marcus could not give me a straight answer to that question, which was an answer in itself. He said that he cared about me and that he was grateful for everything I had done for his family, but he could not say with certainty that he had ever been in love with me. Hearing that was like having my heart ripped out. I had spent 6 years of my life building a relationship with a man who had never actually loved me. I had given birth to his child and was pregnant with another child, but I was just a placeholder in his life. Everything I thought we had built together was just an illusion. I stopped going to couples counseling after that session. Our counselor called me several times to ask me to come back, but I told her there was no point in trying to fix a marriage that had never been real in the first place. Marcus begged me to keep trying, but I could not see any reason to continue. The next few weeks were the worst of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal in front of the kids while trying to figure out what to do about my marriage. I was 6 months pregnant and exhausted, but I could barely sleep because my mind was racing all the time. Emma noticed that I was not wearing my wedding ring anymore and asked me about it. I told her that Marcus and I were having some serious problems and that we might need to live separately for a while. Emma started crying and asked if she and Tyler would have to choose between Marcus and me like kids do in movies about divorce. I assured Emma that no matter what happened between Marcus and me, I would always be part of her and Tyler's lives if they wanted me to be. I told her that I loved her and Tyler just as much as I loved David, and that a divorce would not change that. But I could see that Emma was scared about losing another mother figure. Tyler took the news about our marriage problems much harder than Emma did. He started having nightmares and became very clingy. He asked me several times if I was going to disappear like his mom did, and I had to keep reassuring him that I was not going anywhere. But I was not sure if that was actually true. David was too young to understand what was happening, but he could sense the tension in the house. He started acting out more and having tantrums over little things. Marcus and I were both trying to maintain some normalcy for the kids, but they could tell that something was very wrong. 3 weeks ago, I made the decision to move out of the house temporarily. I told Marcus that I needed space to think about our future without the pressure of trying to keep up appearances in front of the kids. Marcus was devastated and begged me not to leave, but I had already made up my mind. I moved in with my sister Lisa for what I said would be a few weeks. I brought David with me, but Emma and Tyler stayed with Marcus because I did not want to disrupt their school year. We arranged for me to pick up Emma and Tyler several times a week so they could spend time with David and me. Living apart from Marcus has given me a lot of clarity about our relationship. Without the daily stress of trying to make our marriage work, I can see just how unhappy I had been for the past several months. I had been walking on eggshells around Marcus and constantly trying to prove that I was worthy of his love and attention. I also realized that I had been enabling Marcus's inability to move on from Cynthia by being so understanding and accommodating. I had never pushed him to work through his grief because I was afraid of being seen as jealous or insecure. But by not demanding more from him emotionally, I had allowed him to stay stuck in the past. During our separation, Marcus started calling me multiple times a day asking when I was coming home. He said that the kids were miserable without me and that he was realizing how much he had taken me for granted. He begged me to come back and promised that he would work harder on our marriage. But I could see that Marcus was panicking about the practical implications of our separation more than he was actually missing me as a person. He was struggling to manage the kids' schedules and the household responsibilities that I had always handled. He needed me to come back because his life was falling apart without my organizational skills and emotional labor. 2 weeks ago, Marcus did something that made me realize our marriage was truly over. He called Carla and asked her to come help him with Emma and Tyler while I was gone. When I found out about this, I was furious. Marcus had promised to cut off contact with Carla, but the moment I left, he turned to her for support. When I confronted Marcus about contacting Carla, he said that he was desperate for help and that Carla was the only family member who lived close enough to assist with the kids. He said that he had not told Carla any details about our separation and had just asked her to help with child care. I told Marcus that bringing Carla back into our lives was the final straw for me. Carla had spent 2 years trying to destroy our marriage, and now Marcus was rewarding her efforts by giving her access to our children during our most vulnerable time. I said that his decision to contact her showed that he had learned nothing from our counseling sessions. Marcus tried to argue that Carla was just helping with practical matters and that he had not discussed our relationship problems with her. But I knew that Carla would use this opportunity to further poison Marcus against me and to position herself as the better option for helping with Emma and Tyler. I told Marcus that I wanted a divorce. I said that our marriage had been a mistake from the beginning and that we both deserved a chance to find relationships based on actual love instead of convenience and obligation. Marcus broke down crying and said that he did not want to lose our family. But I could see that Marcus was not crying because he loved me and wanted to save our marriage. He was crying because he was scared of being alone again and having to raise 3 kids by himself. His tears were about his own fear and self-pity, not about losing me specifically. I have hired a lawyer and started the divorce process. Marcus and I are working out custody arrangements for David and our unborn son. Emma and Tyler will continue living with Marcus primarily, but they will spend time with me and David several times a week. The hardest part of this whole situation has been explaining to Emma and Tyler that Marcus and I are getting divorced. They have been through so much loss already, and I hate that I am adding to their pain. But I also cannot continue living a lie just to maintain the illusion of family stability. Emma asked me if I was divorcing Marcus because I did not love her and Tyler anymore. I told her that my love for her and Tyler had nothing to do with my marriage to their father, and that I would always consider myself their stepmother regardless of what happened between Marcus and me. Tyler has been the most upset about the divorce. He told me that he was scared he would never see me again and that he did not want to lose another mom. I promised Tyler that I would never disappear from his life unless he wanted me to, and that we would figure out a way to maintain our relationship even though I would not be living in the same house. Update 3. I wanted to post one final update to let everyone know how things have been going since my last post. A lot has happened in the past 4 months, and I think I am finally in a place where I can see the situation clearly. My divorce from Marcus was finalized 6 weeks ago. The process was actually less contentious than I had expected, mostly because Marcus did not fight me on any of the major issues. He agreed to joint custody of David and our new baby, who I will call James, and he supported my request to maintain a relationship with Emma and Tyler. James was born 2 months ago, and the delivery went smoothly despite all the stress I had been under during the pregnancy. Marcus was not present for the birth, which was my choice. I had my sister Lisa with me instead, and she was incredibly supportive throughout the whole experience. Marcus has been a good father to James since he was born. He comes to see the baby several times a week and takes care of him overnight once a week so I can get some rest. Whatever problems Marcus and I had as a couple, I have never doubted that he loves his children and wants to be involved in their lives. David has adjusted well to our new living situation. He stays with Marcus and his older siblings 3 nights a week, and he is with me the other 4 nights. David loves having time with Emma and Tyler, and they have been wonderful big siblings to both him and James. Emma and Tyler have had a harder time adjusting to the divorce, but they are doing better now than they were a few months ago. Emma was angry with me for a while because she felt like I was abandoning the family. She said that I had promised to always be there for her and Tyler, but then I left just like her mom did. I understood why Emma felt that way, but I tried to explain to her that leaving Marcus was not the same as leaving her and Tyler. I told Emma that sometimes adults need to stop being married to each other in order to be better parents to their children. I said that Marcus and I were both happier apart, which meant we could both be more present for our kids. Tyler was more sad than angry about the divorce. He kept asking me if there was anything he could have done differently to make Marcus and me stay together. I had to reassure Tyler many times that the divorce had nothing to do with anything he or Emma or David had done wrong. It took several weeks, but Emma and Tyler eventually started to see that Marcus and I were both more relaxed and happy after the divorce. Marcus was less stressed and distracted, and I was not walking around the house looking miserable all the time. The kids began to understand that our marriage had been making both of us unhappy. My relationship with Emma and Tyler is still strong, although it looks different now than it did when I was married to their father. I pick them up from school 1 day a week and take them to dinner. They come to my apartment every other weekend and help me take care of David and James. Emma and Tyler have started calling me by my first name instead of Sarah Mom, which was their idea. Emma said that calling me Sarah Mom felt weird now that I was not married to their dad anymore. I told her that I understood and that they could call me whatever felt comfortable to them. The most surprising development has been how much my relationship with Marcus has improved since our divorce. Without the pressure of trying to make our marriage work, we have been able to communicate much better as co-parents. Marcus seems like a completely different person now that he is not struggling with guilt about being married to me. Marcus has continued seeing his counselor and has made a lot of progress in dealing with his grief about Cynthia. He told me recently that he finally understands that marrying me was not disrespectful to Cynthia's memory, but that staying in an unhappy marriage would have been disrespectful to both Cynthia and me. Marcus also apologized for the things he said during our worst fight. He said that he knows those words will always be between us, but that he wanted me to know he has never truly wished I was dead. He said that he was lashing out from a place of confusion and self-hatred, and that he is ashamed of how he treated me. I have forgiven Marcus for what he said, although I will never forget it. Marcus cut off all contact with Carla after our divorce. He also started working with his counselor to process his grief about Elena properly. He admitted that Carla had convinced him that being happy with me was betraying Elena's memory. Our co-parenting arrangement has worked out well. Marcus sees David and James regularly, and I still spend time with Emma and Tyler several times a week. The kids have adjusted to our new family structure better than I expected. I moved into my own apartment with David and James. It has been challenging but also freeing to make decisions without considering Marcus's opinions. I am focused on raising my children and building a life that makes me happy. Looking back, I can see that Marcus and I got married for the wrong reasons. He needed help raising his kids, and I wanted to feel needed. Neither of us got what we actually required for lasting happiness. But I do not regret the time we spent together because Emma and Tyler needed stability during those years, and David and James exist because of our relationship. Marcus and I are better as co-parents than we ever were as spouses. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a family is to stop trying to force it into a shape that does not fit.